Hello and welcome back to the Wasteland, everybody. Welcome back to Fallout New Vegas, where today we're going to be talking about a fan favorite gun and one that's been requested quite a bit on these lists. We are going to be talking about the 45 pistol or the 1911 or Joshua's pistol. We're going to be talking about all of them. So the 1911 handgun is a very, very iconic handgun. It both in real life and in video games. It's been around for forever. It was adopted in 1911 by the U.S. military and then went into service shortly after that. So it's been through World War I, World War II, and in the Fallout universe, World War III as well. And it still sees a lot of use, at least in Zion. And its most popular wielder, at least in the Wasteland, is Joshua Graham. So, the 45 auto pistol, which I'm just going to refer to as the 1911 from now on, requires 25 guns in order to wield. It requires also 3 strength to wield, so it's very low skill and strength requirements. Really, at any time, if you're going to run to Zion, you can get the 45 auto pistol and be able to use it pretty effectively. This one does 29 damage per shot, which is pretty decent. This one has 80 DPS, which is really high. You can shoot the 45 pretty fast. This one also has 29 crit damage, which is good. It's about what you would expect from most handguns. Usually crit damage is the same as the regular damage. This has a 1x crit chance modifier, so average. Interestingly enough, the 45 only costs 17 action points in order to use, though, in VATS. So the 45 pistol is really, really strong in VATS because you can shoot it a lot against multiple enemies, which is really cool. So if you're going with the VATS build, it might be something that you want to grab early on. A lot of the handguns are actually pretty decent in a VATS build. This one has 0.8 spread, so it is one of the least accurate handguns in the game. It's not horribly inaccurate, and at most of the ranges you're going to be using this at, it's going to be fine. You're usually not trying to snipe with most pistols. You could arguably do that with like the hunting revolver, and I think that would be probably your best case scenario for a sniper pistol if you want to go with a build like that. This one holds 7 shots in it by default. This one weighs 1.5 weight, so it's not super heavy either, and it is affected by the pack rat perk, which is pretty cool, since that cuts everything in half that weighs 2 or less. And this one has 150 item health, which is not a whole lot, and you can break this fairly quick with at least one of its special ammos. It's not terrible compared to other handguns, though. It's not going to break super fast, and generally you're going to be able to put things down a little bit quicker with the 1911 than some of the other handguns that we've talked about, or handguns that we will talk about, like the 9mm pistol. So let's move to the pros and cons of the 1911. The pros, this one does have really good damage per second. That's really awesome. This one can be silenced with a suppressor on it, and it's one of the strongest suppressed weapons, or at least suppressed handguns that you can sneak into places. You can sneak this into areas. It has very low action point cost, and it has a pretty strong round. All of those are really, really nice. For the major cons of this, though, is that it is a DLC weapon, so if you're playing vanilla New Vegas and you don't have mods installed that make it so enemies can carry around the 1911, then you're only going to be able to find this in Zion. So you do have to go to a DLC in order to get it, and once you go to that DLC, you do have to play through the entirety of the DLC in order to leave. On top of that, its ammo is also a DLC, so again, in vanilla New Vegas, vendors aren't going to be selling this until you leave Zion. So you're only going to be able to find and buy 45 auto there. Vendors do tend to sell at least a decent amount of it, though, after you've completed Zion, after you've completed the Honest Hearts DLC, so finding ammo afterwards isn't such a huge deal. But finding it anytime during the DLC can be a little bit of a pain if you're going to just go with the 1911 there. And then the final con to this is that it does have a decent amount of weapon spread. So it's not going to be super accurate, at least at very long ranges. We already talked about, though, and you don't really need to be using it at long range, but it is just something to kind of keep in mind. There is also one perk that we should talk about that affects the 45 quite a bit, and that is the Grunt perk. Grunt is added in Honest Hearts, and if you get this, then it makes it so all army-style weapons get more damage than they otherwise would. This includes things like the 9mm pistol, the 45 pistol, 9mm SMG. It covers actually a lot of weapons, and it does make it so the DPS can go up really high with the 45, and I would highly recommend that you get it. It's just a very strong perk overall. The only builds it's not super strong on would be like unarmed and energy weapon builds that just don't really get much of a benefit from it. And we should also probably talk about the different ammunition that goes into the 45 pistol too. For different ammunitions, you have 4 of them. You have the standard 45 rounds, which are just like most standard rounds. They give you regular damage, regular spread, regular everything. Nothing crazy about them or nothing strange about them. You have hollow points, which are the general hollow points, so you get 75% more damage, but any target that you're fighting gets 3 times the amount of armor whenever you shoot them. So if you're fighting light armored or non-armored enemies, then this one is really strong. If you're fighting armored enemies, then this one is not very strong at all, so just keep that in mind. You also have the plus P rounds, which these ones are the same as the 9mm plus P rounds, where you get 10% more damage and you ignore 2 armor, but your gun breaks 20% faster. This is generally a bonus to the weapon, however, you do have to just buy this, you can't make it in any way. So finding a lot of plus P is really difficult for the 45. It's also really difficult for the 9mm. I wish there was a bit of a better way to do this, either through perks, at least in the vanilla game, or just being able to do it naturally on the reloading bench. But if you do find it, then it is a little bit of a bonus, so that's pretty good. And then if you have the perk hand loader, then you also get access to the 45 super rounds. And the super rounds are really cool. These ones give you 30% more damage and ignore 4 points of damage threshold, which is pretty good. But they do break your gun 250% faster. So you can break the 45 really quick this way, but it does hit enemies really hard, and ignoring that much armor is quite good on a handgun. This actually makes it fairly efficient against light and medium armored enemies. Heavier armored enemies can still kind of tank through the shots to some extent, but it will still hurt them regardless. For an overall rating on my tier list, I would put the 45 pistol up in a B tier. It's a decent handgun that's kind of above average at everything. It looks really cool and I really enjoy it. It feels really nice too. Just some of the downsides that come with being a DLC weapon sort of hold it back. There is a modded version and a unique version that we need to talk about too. So let's talk about the modded version, which gets 2 mods. This gets the suppressor on it, and it also gets the heavy duty slide. The suppressor is pretty straightforward. It just makes it so your gun is suppressed then, which makes it so enemies are less likely to find you after you've shot a shot near them. Or if you've killed somebody, then it makes it so that they are more likely to ignore you, which that's kind of nice, and it does look pretty cool, as well as the sound effect is pretty decent on the 45, both unsuppressed and suppressed. And then the slide gives you 50% more item durability. This is pretty good. Makes it so you get another 75 HP added to your pistol, so you go up to 225 total HP. That's pretty good for a handgun. That's fairly durable. Again, you can break it fairly quick if you're shooting the super rounds through it, but it's a nice bonus to the weapon, and it just makes the weapon better overall. These are also really easy to get, like most of the DLC weapon attachments, because you can just buy these directly from Joshua as soon as you go to Zion. You can buy a 45 pistol plus as much ammo as you want or can afford, and then the suppressor and the slide on it, and have yourself a fully decked out 1911 as soon as you go to Zion, basically, which is really, really cool. You can do the same thing with the 45 SMG and the War Club too. For the different add-ons to this, I wouldn't actually move it up any in terms of tiers. I would still keep the modded 45 into B tier as well. It is really nice to have a suppressor on it. It's really nice for it to have extra health, but it doesn't really change it too much. It's better as a holdout weapon, but there's not a whole lot of holdout areas. It is probably one of the best holdout weapons overall, though, because it kind of works well in any sort of situation. There's a couple weapons that do that really well. This one, like the 44 Magnum, Lucky, and things like Chance's Knife are really strong. There's actually a lot of melee and unarmed that's really strong in holdout areas. The modded 45 is also really nice. If you like it that way, then go ahead and use it. If you don't like it that way and you like the standard 1911, you can also use it that way. I find that both of them are really good. The unique version is Joshua's handgun, and Joshua's handgun is called a light shining in darkness. This is actually a reference to a verse in the Bible, which is pretty fitting for Joshua to have a handgun like this. I believe the verse goes something like, "The light shineth and the darkness comprehend it not," or something along those lines. This one you get from completing Honest Hearts. So after you've already done all the main quests to Honest Hearts, then there will be a footlocker at the end of it, and this will have Joshua's handgun. It will also have other things like Salt Upon Wounds Power Fist. You'll also get Salt Upon Wounds helmet, Joshua's outfit, and Daniel's outfit too. So you get a lot of gear from that. This one is different in terms of requirements and just kind of different overall. This is a shorter 1911. I don't think it's technically a 1911. I think it's like a Colt Commander or something. I don't remember the exact name of it. Basically, it's just a squished down 1911. This one requires 75 guns to wield and 3 strength. So strength requirement is still extremely low, but the guns requirement has upped substantially. You do need to have a decent amount of guns to wield this effectively, which is kind of cool and makes sense for this particular weapon. This does 33 damage a shot, so slightly more damage than the standard 45. This one does 144 damage per second, so a lot faster rate of fire with this one, and a lot more DPS because of that, which is really good. This one does 33 crit damage, which is about normal. This one has a 2x crit modifier, so it's more likely to hit crits. This one only requires 15 action points to use, so it's even better in a VATS build than the standard 45, which is already really good for a VATS build. This one has a 0.55 spread, which is okay for a handgun. It's about on the average. It's not super accurate, but it's not super inaccurate either. And most of the time you're not going to be using the handgun at super long range anyway, but this one is a little bit better than the regular 45. This one does only hold 6 rounds in it. Since it's a smaller gun, it can't hold as many rounds in it. 6 shots might not seem like very much for a semi-automatic handgun, but this thing has a really fast reload. So usually the way I use this is just mag dump the whole thing and then reload to the next enemy, unless I can kill the enemy in 1 or 2 shots. But usually I'm going to be using this against fairly strong enemies because the damage per second is really high. That gets even higher with Grunt. It's really, really strong with the Grunt perk. This one also doesn't weigh very much at 1.2 weight, so it's one of the lightest handguns in the entire game, which is pretty cool. And this one has 250 item health to it, so it can actually survive the super rounds loaded into it pretty well. And if you do load super rounds into this, the DPS goes up really high and it can shred through just about anything in the game. This is probably one of the strongest handguns overall in the entire game. It's one of my absolute favorite handguns in the entire game. It is very fun to use. It is quite strong. Can break kind of quick if you're using the super rounds, but that's just kind of the downside of using those bullets. And this one I would put much higher than the other handguns. I would put this one straight up into the S tier. I think this is one of the best handguns in the game overall, just kind of everything. You can also sneak this in anywhere, as you would kind of expect, since you can sneak the regular 45 in. And this one is terrifying in any of the enclosed areas where you can sneak weapons in, because most of the time enemies don't have very high armor. And if you don't have very high armor and you have a gun that does a lot of DPS, then you can clear up the area really, really fast. So that's pretty cool. So overall, should you use the 1911 in Fallout New Vegas? If you're using a pistol build, then yeah, absolutely. Or if you just really like the look of it, then yeah, absolutely. It's just an overall really strong weapon. Same goes with its unique version. Both are really good. They're both really cool. I know a lot of people really like them. That's probably why this video got requested by so many people. I think this one was the second or most requested just after the That Gun video, which was the 5.56 pistol, which I also understand. The Blade Runner handgun is really cool too. Tell me your thoughts on the 1911 down in the comments below. How do you enjoy using it? Do you enjoy the modded version or the unique version more? And thank you guys so very much for watching this. I hope you guys did enjoy this video, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye-bye, everyone!